Hey friendly foes! Today we are playing with silicone, specifically making silicone molds out of silicone caulking that you can get in any hardware store or Walmart. So this is a nice, cheap, easy way for mold making, since a kit can cost 20 bucks or more. So all you need, this is super simple, is the caulking that has to be 100% silicone. You need a bucket, and you need some dish soap and water, of course. And then for safety, this is just latex gloves, which you will probably notice later I may or may not be wearing. We've done it without, but safety first, so wear the gloves. All credit for this goes to Audrey Obscura over on Instructables. This is not my original idea. I'm following her tutorial, but I am going to be putting a couple of twists on it, and then at the end, John and I are going to do some experiments, which I'm hoping will do some fun new things with the silicone mold. Oh, and of course, if you're making a mold, you need something that you're going to make a mold of. I've got a little stash of things over here that we're going to try. These are just a little sculpted Christmas ornament, some jewelry pieces. I'm keeping it small because, again, we're just trying to experiment. And I'm curious to see how much detail we'll get with these molds, so we're going to learn together. This is a little Mardi Gras coin from like 2002. I don't know where I found this. Just to see, again, the level of detail we'll get out of the molds. So what I'm going to do next is fill this bucket with water, and then we'll get started. Okay, we're back with the bucket. This is our lovely garage bucket. I've got some water in there. And now we are going to add a whole bunch of soap. It's a technical term. This is not an exact science. You're just adding a whole bunch. Now the reason you're doing this, let's try that. The reason you're doing this is so that the silicone caulking later will not stick to you. And it acts as a catalyst. And what the soap is doing is it's a catalyst that's going to make the silicone harden a little faster. And I don't feel like that's quite soapy enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Sorry, the lovely view of my arm. Go. Okay. Once you've got a really nice and soapy water, you're going to start adding the silicone. Now, I've already had my lovely assistant John cut off the tip of the silicone, but there's something I want to show you guys. If you've never used this before, you might not realize that inside the tube, there's an additional seal in there, a metal seal that you have to puncture. So you can see the tip's cut off. But now we need to take a screwdriver and just puncture that tip in there before any of it will come out. Easy peasy. Okay, and again, my lovely assistant John is providing me with a caulk gun right here. So we're just going to, I'm going to do a small batch of this because, again, the things I'm doing are small. So I'm just going to do a little bit of this here into the water. Now what you're going to do is reach in and grab all that noodly stuff. It's so weird. And you're going to start kneading it. Let me make sure I've got it all in my hands here. A couple of extra pieces. You'll notice I'm actually doing this with gloves on because I'm trying to go the safety route. Now this is super, super spongy and gooey. If it starts to stick to anything, like you, make sure you get more soap on it. Now this kneading is causing air bubbles to get captured inside the silicone, almost like kneading bread. And that's going to cause it to look a little cloudy later on, because normally this kind of silicone would be perfectly clear, but our end result is going to be a bit cloudy. Now this is starting to stick to my gloves. So I think I'm going to add some more soap to the water and potentially lose the gloves. Okay, I've lost the gloves. I'm going in with my hands. Oh, John's reminding me to take my ring off. Hang on. Okay, there we go. Oh, this feels so funky. John's pointing out also it's a good idea to keep it under the water while you're kneading as much as you can, which is why I'm doing this awkward angle. And it does seem to be helping with the sticking quite a lot. It's not sticking to my fingers anymore. Now you're going to feel after just a moment or two to keep doing this, it's going to start to firm up and get more pliable where it's going to hold its shape. You can already see it's less stringy. And you've only got a couple of minutes of open time in that magic moment to make your mold. So let's see, let's start. Yeah, I think it's in good shape now. So we're going to pull the bucket away. My lovely assistant. Okay. Now, this here is a smooth plastic cutting mat, so the silicone won't stick to it later. So you can see I've just got a big fat disc kind of right there. And let's start. I'm going to try this the seahorse pin. This is a little vintage metal pin we're going to try out. So we're just going to press it right in. Okay, I think that's pretty well in. We will see. And then we're actually going to let it dry inside the mold, and then we'll just peel it out later. Okay, I'm actually on my second batch. I'm going to do another mold here. This is the same soapy water. You can keep reusing it. And you'll notice I am not wearing gloves. I did try. I had gloves on for a little while, but the silicone really started sticking to all the folds in the latex gloves. So we're just going to skip those and go straight in with our hands. I'm going to do this next mold. I'm going to do this next one a little softer because I want to really get a detailed mold. So we're going to see if a floppier consistency will help with that. So let me get the bucket out of the way. And then just to prevent this from sticking to my mat here, I've got a transparency sheet, just an overhead projector thing. There's a piece of tissue under it, which is why it's white. Just ignore that. And I'm just going to stick this right on there. And then I'm going to try and make a mold of this piece here. It's actually a little Christmas ornament, just made of resin. But I like the scroll work on it, so let's see if that works. You can see I'm kind of patting in the sides, just because it wants to flatten out and separate from the piece inside. So you just sort of just pat it back into place. Okay, for this one I'm using a little owl pin. I'm very curious to see, as you can see, it's got all these see-through bits, so I don't know how that's going to work in a mold. We'll find out. Okay, for this one I'm going to try a coin, which has a very slight relief on it, so I'm curious to see if any of this works in the mold. Okay, so we've done a couple of molds, and now we're going to start the experimentation part of the process. I'm going to try tinting the silicone. So to do this, you're just going to need a little plastic cup and a stir stick of some sort, disposable of course, and I'm going to be using alcohol inks. This is a pretty teal. And then we're using the same silicone caulking in the caulking. So what we're going to do is we're going to tint this first and then put it into the soapy water just like we have before and see if it works. Okay, and then we're going to start with just maybe a drop or two. Actually, let's do 3 drops. 3 drops sounds good. And stir it up. Now we did experiment with this just a little bit before using orange alcohol ink. And it makes a really beautiful fire kind of effect. So that's what we were trying to do with it before, was to make fake flame tips. And it actually does work. Okay, and that's fairly well mixed. So now I'm going to transfer this into the soapy water and go through the same process as I did before for the mold making. Just going to scrape this in. Yeah, part of the reason that I wanted to try tinting this, besides it's just pretty, is the fact that it's going to make it easier when you're using something like Easy Cast or a clear resin, whether it's clear or white. Sometimes that's hard to show up in a white mold, so this way I'm hoping it'll help during the resin pouring section. Well, so far this is working great. This is just like before. It's not even staining my hands, which I'm very impressed by. That soap provides enough of a barrier. The consistency is the same. I'm flinging water everywhere. Like I just don't care. Oh, sorry, I hope I'm not getting your laptop. Okay, I care a little bit. Okay, so this is about ready to mold. Okay, for this I'm just using a little tiny Hufflepuff pin. Again, I really want to see if any of this detail comes through. Okay, it's only been about 15 minutes since we did our first mold with the seahorse pin, and this thing is already solid and ready to be demolded, which is kind of cool. So, let's see how well this works. Just kind of peel it away from the edges. Has a handy little pin bar. Okay. And you can see it didn't damage the pin at all. It's enameled metal, it's fine. So we won't know for sure just how detailed this mold is until we go ahead and pour some resin into it, but just from looking at it, it looks pretty fantastic. You can see those sharp edges. I'm really impressed with that. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, again, it's only been about 15 minutes since we did this mold, and it's already set up and ready for demolding. Let's go ahead and pop this baby out. Again, this is a little ornament, Christmas ornament. Actually made for a miniature tree. I got it in the miniature ornament aisle years ago. Okay, just pop that out. You can see that the original is fine. There's no silicone sticking to it. And I'm pretty impressed. See the star in there? It seems to be capturing the detail pretty well. Obviously the true test will be when we pour in some resin, which we'll do soon. But so far that's looking good. Okay, so I'm testing this one just to see if we can demold it yet, and I don't think it's quite ready. Part of the way you can tell is just when you squeeze down hard. If it wants to stay, that means it's not quite ready. This is springing back, but not as much as I'd like it to. It should be a really hard rubber. So we're just going to give this another 5 minutes or so. Okay, we've waited about 20 minutes or so just to be extra safe on these, and now we're going to demold the rest of them. Again, this is a little jewelry finding of an owl. Pushed it pretty far in. Hey, that looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm impressed with that one. Okay. Here's this coin. And again, this is a transparency sheet. It just has tissue under it, but that's so the silicone doesn't stick to it. Okay, this is a little Mardi Gras coin. Pop that out. I think I can see, oh, sorry. I think I can see a little detail in there. I'll be curious to see how much the resin really captures of that. Okay, and then the final one. It's our little Hufflepuff pin in the colored resin, or sorry, colored silicone. Pop that out. Okay. I was just playing with some of the excess. I rolled a little snake of the colored silicone here. And again, I really think there's a lot of possibilities here. You could literally pipe this with a piping bag and metal tips and make it look like icing, turn it into a bracelet because it's really flexible. And here's a little, whoop, slippery. This is just a hard ball. I don't know exactly what all you could do with this, but it's a fun tool to play with. So if you guys think of things, let me know. Okay, so the next step is we're going to pour resin into these molds and that'll be the true test to see just how much detail this silicone mold is able to capture. So the next time you see me, we'll have some resin to demold. This will be fun. I'm excited. Okay, so we're ready to demold the resin seahorse. Just as a reminder, this is what we started with to make the mold, and then that's just a 2-part casting resin in there. Yeah, I think it did a good job capturing the detail. The pin itself is not glass smooth on the body, so it definitely captured the texture. And my cast is a little thicker, so you can see the nose looks a little weird because the pin was super thin, so I just need to sand that down. But yeah, I think that's done really well. So now we're going to do the other molds and see how those turned out. All right, so we're going to start with the snowflake ornament. There we go. Ooh, that's nice. There we go. Okay, you can start to see the detail in there. Really nice. Okay, let's do another one. This is the owl head. See this thing. So I'm very curious to see how this turned out. Okay. So I think they turned out kind of cool in this. And I have to say, I am very impressed. I really wasn't expecting this level of detail to be captured with the silicone mold, but it really is done well. Next, we're going to do the Mardi Gras coin. You can already tell, I think I pushed the coin too hard. It's a little too thin on the back. Yeah, I'm seeing some definite detail in there. This is our colored one. You remember I mixed in some alcohol inks. That's pretty good. Okay, we're back, and now I've got a side-by-side comparison of the original objects that we cast with our resin cast versions that I have now painted. Well, actually, John painted them. He painted them gold, and then I aged them black to bring out that detail. So we're going to start at the top, and we're going to do a side-by-side comparison. So again, this is the object that we cast originally. That's the original. And then this is our version. So I'm going to see if I can get this to focus at all. There we go. Now it did lose some detail. I think this is showing up on screen. The edges look great, the points are good, but the very center you can see there's a lot of detail here. It missed on that one. Got it in there a little bit, it's just not as perfect as the first one. But overall, it's pretty fantastic, right? I mean, that's way better than I was expecting. Okay, so that's the snowflakes. The coin was probably the worst one. But then this was also the hardest test for the silicone mold. This is a super shallow relief of a Mardi Gras coin from Universal. Like, you can barely feel it. It's just slightly there. And then this is my cast version. And you can actually read Universal on it and see some of it. But it has a funky texture to it. John's hypothesizing it's the air bubbles inside the silicone. It could have been dust. I'm not sure. It just didn't turn out very great. So I wouldn't really recommend it for super fine details like that. Okay, so that's the coin. This is one of my favorites. This owl pin, this is the original here, and you can see it's see-through. And so I didn't know what to expect with that. And in the end, the cast version looks better than the original. Look how cool. And again, that's just spray painted gold, and then I aged it with my just black acrylic paint, where you just brush it on and wipe it off. Easy peasy. And I think, again, that just looks fantastic. I'm really pleased with that one. Okay, next one, this also turned out really well, is the seahorse pins. This is the original, kind of a chippy enamel paint. And then with this one, I left a lot more of the black on because I thought it looked better. The original is not super smooth, and the cast reflected that. But overall, I mean, that totally looks like a metal seahorse pin, right? I'm really impressed. I did sand all of these, by the way, because they all had edges and bumps and stuff, so I sanded the back smooth. There's that one. And then the final one was another tough test for the silicone, just because it was so tiny. This is a little tiny Hufflepuff pin. That's the original. It looks great at first glance, but as you get closer, you can probably tell you can't quite read it there. I mean, it's close. It says Hufflepuff on the bottom. It didn't quite come through on there, but you'd have to get super close to see that. So again, it's not capturing every tiny detail, but overall, I am super impressed and surprised that a silicone mold got this level of detail in it. So that's all of our experimenting. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and this gave you a better idea of just what you can do with your crafting and cosplaying and DIYing with the silicone caulking. Hope you guys have fun. Bye!